Well, welcome everyone. I am so excited to have you with us today for our Brunch and Learn webinar. Given the business environment that we are in today, where really nothing is as it was, we started these Brunch and Learns at Delegate Solutions as a way to present information and learning in a fun and unique way, and to really think differently about the challenges and opportunities around us. So we're mixing, usually we mix morning cocktails. Admittedly, I'm having water this morning with an eye on exploring our top 10 tips to master delegation. So my goal is to serve you up some thoughtful content in a more relaxed environment, but in efficient setting, 30 minutes in and out, along with some live speed coaching at the end. So consider me your content mixologist for today. I'm Eileen Coombes. I am spending most of my days building our educational content for the learning division here at Delegate Solutions. That means I have the pleasure of leading the department that houses our delegation training, our workshops, our coaching services, and along with our newest course for emerging leaders. And this new workshop really helps new managers build that healthy delegation habit from the onset of their leadership journey. It's a lot of fun. But with me today, I have my colleague, Mackenzie Lyons. She's sort of the magic behind the scenes today, but will hop in during our speed coaching session at the end to provide her insights as well. Mackenzie is part of our learning team here at Delegate and serves as our lead workshop facilitator and as a coach. So thanks for being with us here today, Mackenzie. At Delegate Solutions, we are delegation purists. We are obsessed with it. We are constantly thinking about delegation, talking about it, and building out the future of where we are going with it and the impact we can make with the time we free up through delegation. And before I dive into the content today, I want to start with a really simple question. When you think about when and how you delegate, what emotions does that bring up for you? Can you remember back to your first delegation experience? Maybe it was your parents or your siblings delegating chores to you. What did that feel like? Why don't you just mull over that for a minute and hold on to those feelings? Keep thinking about them. But when I look back, I probably felt frustrated, probably exhausted, maybe even a little bit annoyed, if I'm being honest. And perhaps you can relate to that. So many of our emotions around delegation come from these earlier life experiences and memories of delegation, some of which can be negative and lead to self-sabotaging thoughts and behaviors as we try to delegate later in life. So today I want you to acknowledge that those limiting beliefs may be holding you back from truly letting go. And I want you to reframe your thinking just a bit around delegation. So instead of thinking of it as something negative or a chore, something you have to do and maybe aren't good at, let's shift that thinking and think about it as a tool that you can master and use to increase the impact of your work and time. If you or your team are feeling frustrated with delegation, try making this simple mindset shift and start to view delegation as an energy management system. When we view delegation as a way to manage our energy, it becomes motivating. It feels energizing. And it's no longer feels like a chore because it becomes a tool in our toolbox that we can master and put into practice. So I'm going to repeat that. I want you to keep this in mind. Delegation is an energy management system, and it really is a game changer if you can manage it and master it. One of the foundational core concepts that I want to begin with is that effective delegation is comprised of three parts. For a leader to successfully delegate and for delegation to go well, they have to master the art, the science, and the discipline of delegation. So the art is typically what I think is the fun part. It's the way you design and approach the what of delegation. What are you actually going to hand off to someone else? The science is also referred to as the handoff. It's how do you effectively delegate this item? How do you manage it, that process? What's in place to make sure it's successful? And then the discipline. This is about your commitment to see it through. And mastering this part can sometimes be the most challenging, but it's also an essential piece for leaders to develop. So, I want you to think through that, think through these three pieces and just recognize which one you might be challenged with the most. And as I go through the 10 tips to master delegation, Keep these three parts in mind because there will be specific tips that help you kind of master each piece a little bit better. So let's begin with tip number one, which is really about the art piece. Know what you want to spend your time on. One of the biggest mistakes I see leaders make all the time is that they truly are, they're not focused on the important piece. They're focused on what they need to clear off their plates. And they don't think about the inverse, which I do think is more important. And that's what they want to spend their newfound time on. Delegation is only impactful if we are clear on how we want to spend our time. Otherwise, we're perpetuating a cycle, creating a vacuum of time and energy to fill with more unfulfilling activities, which only increases our frustration with delegation. When that happens, we feel like there's no progress. We don't feel the impact of letting go. And so we kind of throw our hands up in the air and just are like, okay, I'm not good at delegating. But the truth is, everyone can master this crucial leadership skill with the right tools and mindset. So, in order to know what you want to spend your time on, the tool you see on your screen called the Elevated Week is one that you can use today. You can share it with your direct reports or even the managers that you report up to in order to bring clarity as to how everyone across your team wants to spend their time. This simple, it's a one-page exercise, super simple. It sets up a framework for personal reflection, but also if it's applicable, an effective conversation with others about delegation, energy, time, and impact. It crystallizes how you can elevate your work week and the potential delegation opportunities you can share with others across your team. So it's an activity designed to really help you think deeper about the way you prioritize your time week over week. And ultimately, it allows you to think about your day in terms of the impact you can make in the organization. When you've freed up that time thanks to delegation, it paints a picture of how you want to exert your time and energy. And that really is a crucial step in delegation success. So you'll receive a copy of this PDF after today's webinar as well. But it's a really great tool, and I highly recommend spending some time reflecting and working through it. So let's move on to tip two to start with your goals. This is the step most people skip when they begin delegating, but delegation should always start from your established goals. The ability to be leveraged in alignment with the things you are most focused on should always be part of your initial strategy when you look at what to delegate. So from there, once those goal focused delegations are captured and prioritized, then you can start to look at the low hanging fruit, the work you don't like to do, or even the work you aren't good at. When you take the time to have clarity on the most impactful use of your time, and you couple that with a commitment to delegate around the goals you're chasing and have committed to, you'll start your delegation journey with a really solid foundation that will finally make an impact. So to understand what that looks like in real life, as you're thinking about these are the questions I want you to ask yourself and kind of reflect on. What are the things I want to be spending my time on, right? Like, what am I committing to? What am I using my time and energy toward? What are the goals that I'm working toward this week, this month, this quarter? List those out and start to break them down into small bite-sized chunks, working backwards. And as you do that, ask yourself, what are the activities or tasks that need to happen for me to accomplish my goal? What do I specifically need to do to make that happen? What is the role you need to play? Once you identify those pieces, then that you need to focus on, whatever is left over, that's what you can delegate. That's what you can hand off. So we've got some positive energy coming into delegation. You've got clarity on what you want to spend your time on thanks to that worksheet. And you're focusing on delegations that support your big goals to help you get there faster. Let's look at tip number three. So this is going to bring us to the science piece, which is always delegate the end result. And this tip is about how you successfully delegate a task from your plate to someone else. You need to paint a picture of what success looks like when the project or task is done. By sharing this, you let your delegation partner find their own way. And you may be surprised, the person you delegate to just might do it better and faster than you could, but you will end up with the overall result you wanted in the end. If your delegation partner understands the impact of the activity and what the end result looks like, they'll definitely feel better equipped and more empowered to move things along in an effective and intentional way. So to do this successfully, you need to share what you envision as the end result with your delegation partner, and then explain what has to be true when it's complete. Then just let them take it from there. We have a really great tool on our website called the 5-step delegation template. It's actually 6 steps now, that you can use to kind of simplify this process. You can fill in the prompts to ensure that there's a really good, strong handoff and that your delegation partner understands what that end result is. And we even offer it as a tear-off pad that you can keep right on your desk. And we'll share a link to that. Mackenzie's holding it up, but we'll share a link to that in the post email as well, because it's a really great supplemental tool. All right, so now for tip 4, you need to establish a communication strategy. Honestly, delegation can really fall flat if it's not managed with effective communication. So setting up a communication strategy with the person you're delegating to is going to increase success every time. And this means you need to establish who is doing what by when, and then discuss how and when to check in. So for example, do you want to schedule some touch base meetings to know that the delegation is on track? Do you want to establish daily or regular progress summary reports? Maybe you just want someone to own it until a certain point and then check in. Know your preferences and communicate them before you hand the task off to someone and send them off with that delegation. Use this strategy to eliminate any possibility of ambiguity by creating that immediate clarity when you hand things off. Tip number 5, feedback is a must. As part of the overall communication strategy, feedback has to be a part of this process. It is an absolute must when it comes to delegation. The reality is that delegation is not a singular experience, even at the task level. And so by committing to giving and receiving feedback, it really helps you become a stronger delegator and helps you and your team really become more in sync. We often focus on feedback when things don't go well, and there's obviously a lot we can learn from that, right? However, we can also learn so much when things go smoothly, when someone takes a project or activity and does it even better than we could imagine it. So if the person whom you delegate to does it well, highlight that. Explain what worked well so they and why it was helpful so that they can learn it. They will view the importance of their work so much more. They will feel connected to it in that bigger picture as a result. And quite frankly, I think giving them that positive feedback is going to motivate them to continue the great work because they feel valued. Feedback works both ways. So let your partner give you feedback as well so that you can become a stronger delegator. Their feedback may help you overcome any bottlenecks that you're exhibiting and that's causing frustration in delegation. And honestly, that mutual feedback is going to improve the trust with your team as well as your just ability to adapt in the moment. Tip 6 is to start small to build confidence. Finding some quick wins is a way to really create more positive momentum and keep you in that positive mindset when it comes to delegation. Once you're really clear on the most impactful use of your time and you're delegating activities tied to your goals, you can also incorporate some smaller handoffs to kind of build that confidence. A great place to start is with repeatables and low-hanging fruit delegations. For example, consider a research project. Consider delegating that. It's a low risk but impactful activity. And I'll be honest, I often will use research projects to build my confidence in someone's ability because there's no loss there if it doesn't go perfectly. It's a good way for me to test out, am I giving them enough information and can they do this type of work? You might also consider activities like calling a vendor, coordinating travel, ordering lunches, small things like that. I'm sure you can think of a million other examples too of things you do that could help you build that small confidence. But ultimately, I really believe that grabbing the small wins is essential. And keep in mind that if it only takes you 5 minutes to complete it, it still equates to time saved. And those 5 minutes add up over time. So it's still a win. And you can build your confidence in this phase as a result. Okay. Speaking of small wins, let's talk about tip 7, which I think is absolutely key, and that's compartmentalizing the larger activities. Um, People get stuck in delegation all the time because they get overwhelmed, and when they try to think about how to hand off a big or complex project or activity. And that happens a lot. Most of the time, we can break a big complex thing down into smaller digestible chunks, and then the delegations sort of just naturally show themselves as a result. I like to have someone interview me when I'm stuck, to help me kind of lay out the steps. That simple exercise helps me see the delegation more clearly. So for example, if you're someone who wants to delegate your calendar management, you want someone to handle all your scheduling, that can feel really complex and overwhelming because you've got specific preferences and things that, need to be a part of that process. So if you are handing off a calendar to someone and it feels daunting, think about handing over like smaller pieces, little aspects of it, and then layering in the next steps as you get comfortable. Maybe you start with having them just book and schedule lunches for you. Maybe you have them build out ideal like time block for you and lay those out on your calendar so that you can follow that time block. As you get those pieces in there and you get more and more comfortable with that person's abilities, then you can start to add another piece in and another until they can really fully own your calendar and scheduling aspects. Okay, we're in the home stretch now. We have 3 more tips to go, which are all part of the discipline component needed to ensure your delegation journey is impactful. So let's talk about tip 8. And I think when it comes to improving your discipline, this one might challenge you a little bit because it certainly does me. But you need to get comfortable with the 80%. Remember that when it comes to delegation, we need to focus on progress, not perfection. So ask yourself, if someone can do this 80% as well as I could the first time, is that good enough? In most cases, it is. If we're really honest with ourselves, in most cases, it is. You can build up to 100% over time, but you have to know that someone is on the right track to feel that progress and momentum, to feel like delegation is working. You can also think about this tip in terms of the 80-20 rule, meaning you can have someone do 80% of the work, leaving you with the remaining 20%, those final tweaks and special touches that only you can bring to the table. Honestly, having someone just start something for you is a win. And I use this strategy all the time because it applies the pressure for me to see that delegation through. If they've already got started, I have to complete it. I have to keep going. So one thing to note here with this particular tip is that when you delegate something the first time, that doesn't mean it's totally off your plate. You have to save some space and time as you plan the delegation for that 20% that you may need to add. So be sure to account for that, for your time and your energy because that activity will likely come back on your plate at some point. So let's move on to tip 9, to commit to the boring stuff. The boring stuff makes up about 50% of our businesses, and it is super important. This might be things like general administrative duties, maybe submitting vendor orders, following up on emails or calls, that kind of thing. But that back office administrivia is the backbone of how you deliver what you do in an effective and unique way. And honestly, the great news is there are teammates who love that kind of work, who love those activities. Mackenzie's one of them. She's raising her hand there. Ignoring the process around it and not deliberately setting the delegation up for success will not advance your goals or those of the company. Additionally, when we commit to delegation, we are creating in many ways growth opportunities for other teammates to develop their own skills in those areas. So I like to think of this, even those boring things, as professional development opportunities. You'd be surprised who might be interested in that activity and eager to learn and grow in that way. You just simply have to ask, to be honest. And as a leader, I think it's really important to remember that your ongoing commitment to the process of delegation is critical, and that it may take many iterations of an administrative process to find the right solution. And that's totally okay. It's normal. All right. Last but not least, our final tip of the day, tip 10, is to set expectations, accountabilities, and share your why. So think back to your earlier childhood delegation memories that I asked you to reflect on earlier. Imagine, rather than just telling you to do a chore or activity, the person delegating gave you permission to do it your own way and shared why it was important to them or to the big picture. That's important, right? That's like a game changer. And the same is true in when you think about delegation in the workplace. Sharing why the project is important to you is going to more deeply engage your delegation partner in achieving the end result. If they understand the impact of the project or task, they'll feel better equipped and definitely more empowered to move things along in a really effective and intentional way. When you can explain the why behind a task, it significantly impacts team dynamics. It holds you as the leader accountable for your ideas. It creates clarity around expectations, and it prevents chaos and frustration. And that explanation can really foster a strong foundation of trust and provide a clear understanding of the task's purpose and importance. When you're handing things off, don't just do a drive-by delegation and lob a task at an innocent bystander. That's awful. Don't do that. Make the commitment to set expectations, establish that accountability, and then share your why. Those three things, those three pieces will bring so much clarity to the person you're delegating to and will ensure that that delegation runs smoothly each time. All right, so these are the 10 tips to mastering delegation, and they're designed to really help you enhance your impact as a leader. I really hope they inspire you. As you look at this list, definitely think about which ones you want to improve on, because we all can improve at any point. I still have to work on some of these, even though I teach these and have these committed to memory. All right, I want to take this learning to the next level with some live speed coaching, really focused on your burning delegation questions. So this is an opportunity for you to ask questions and get personalized advice. Mackenzie is going to step up too and help me as she coaches and works with all of this as well. So feel free to share your burning questions in the chat, and Mackenzie and I will be happy to answer those. Let's see what we've got.
We do have one that I love because it goes to the 80-20 rule. It says, do I take the 80% good so I'll finish it off approach, or do I give feedback to ensure a perfect job?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think it depends on your preference, and I think it depends on the person you're delegating to. If you're okay finishing it off and finishing that 20%, that's great. But I do think you miss a learning opportunity for the person you're delegating to if you don't give them feedback in the moment or explain why you're making the decision you are to finish off that project. So there's an educational component I think is missing if you only finish it off and don't share what you're doing and why you're doing it. I don't know, Mackenzie, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, interesting. I'm actually working with a client on this exact same thing right now. And I think the learning component is there. And I said, absolutely. If you want to do the last 20%, go for it. I said, but if you tell me what your 20% is that you're working on, even if you still have to own it, maybe then the next time I can take 15% of that work off. So the next time you're really only doing the last 5%. And so it becomes a conversation, and another building block into that layer that you were talking about. We're building another step with the scheduling, or we're building another step with the process.
I love that.
So yeah, we do that.
Love that.
Okay. So Ben would love us to go deeper into number 6, which is start small to build confidence. He is already working with our delegate team, but he's in the first month of it. And so he feels the scope is creeping. Okay. It is the first 30 days. I just have to put that caveat. It is the first 30 days.
Makes sense. So for number 6, is that the
Yeah, which is to start small to build confidence. So go deeper into that one.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, this one is about thinking about those low risk activities that you can delegate, that if it doesn't go perfectly, it's not the end of the world. You can test out skill set based on what you're doing. So, when I've worked with our clients on the virtual assistant side of the house before, between myself and the partner, we're testing out who's better at what. Like, I know I don't enjoy scheduling. It's not a strength of mine, but my partner's it is. And so we will kind of test out those types of activities. But I think when you're thinking about starting small, it's, the research project, it's drafting something for the client, it's proofreading something, it's researching travel opportunities, whatever that is, so that we can make progress and build the confidence with the client. It might also be kind of tagging into number 7. If you've got this big, large project that you want your team to handle, working with them to break it down step by step. And as you do that, the small pieces will start to unfold. And those are good ways to test out the team skills and abilities too.
Yeah.
I don't know, Mackenzie, what's in your head about that one?
So as you were talking, Ben also said it's creepy because they're amazing and I might be adding too much too soon. And so what I have to say to that is, let's go to number 2, is what you're delegating out based on your goals. So if you're, like Eileen said, like, don't just like throw spaghetti at the wall and hope that the delegation works. Like, make sure it's tied to your goals. So if your goal is to connect with 10 more networking partners, then let's make sure that that's what you're starting small with in number 6. And also, even though it's not necessarily on here, it is kind of along with number 2 is prioritizing. So if you have a ton of stuff you want to delegate, it's not that your team can't handle all the things you want to delegate, but you do need to prioritize what's most important. So start with number 2, start with the goals. How do these directly impact? And then start small, compartmentalize, and let's see what we can go from there.
And I love that you said prioritize that list of things, because I think it can get overwhelming, all the things you want to get off your plate immediately. So think about what's going to bring you the most impact in terms of your time and energy. And think about what brings you no joy that you can get off your plate quickly, so you're in a happier headspace to focus on the things you care about and deserve.
Absolutely. Do we have time for one more?
I think so. Yeah, I know we're a little over, but hopefully everyone
will be a little over. So I only want to create ideas and visions and share the dream. And then I want to give it over to the team, but I don't really want to manage them either. So how do I delegate? We seem to be stuck and we haven't really figured out any system. So then it all comes back to me because I'm the bottleneck.
Yeah. So you definitely need a delegation process. I think our delegation template is a really good solution to that, to help you take those visionary ideas and break them into like a manageable process and system for your team. I don't like managing people either. I get it. Like, you want to pass it off and just hope they can run with it. But if they don't have the success criteria, if they don't have access to the platforms they need to get that thing done, if they don't have all the little pieces, the contextual information they need to run with something, they're going to get stuck and constantly come back to you, and you're going to have to manage even further. So it is really important up front to set a process in place and to establish, go back to like number 3, delegating the end result. And then number 4, establishing that communication strategy. So if you don't want to have to manage them day over day, think about like those status updates that you need. Do you need to have a meeting in a week to check in? Do you want a weekly email update from them? Do you want every 2 weeks to connect? Think about what's going to allow you to let go and trust them, but still have a pulse on what's happening so you can step in if you have to, and hopefully you don't have to. But if you're really clear on that success criteria in the front end, hopefully that'll mitigate the need to manage day to day.
Yeah. And I have to throw in, I think number 5 is really important. In a current project we're doing right now, it's feedback both ways. So I'm saying to the client, hey, so you want this to look like this, but it can't, because we have this much information that will not fit on an 8.5. And so So what's most important in talking them through, and then them giving, then us working on a small part. So then also pulling in number 6, we're going to work on a small part. I'm going to send it back to you, and you're going to give me more feedback on what you're really looking for. So even as a visionary and seeing the vision, sometimes we know it's hard to get what you see here out of your mouth. And so we have clients that draw us pictures. We have clients that we show 3 different versions to. And so I think that's important, is that feedback is always happening both ways so that everybody's getting information.
Yeah. It'll move towards perfection as you get more comfortable with those preferences and things. I love that. Wonderful. I know we are out of time, so I do want to thank you all for joining. I love the questions and the participation, so thank you so much. Keep an eye out on your inbox for an email that will include the tools and tips that we discussed and a replay of today's webinar, which you're welcome to share with your teams. I really hope as you move forward that you remember to embrace that art, science, and discipline piece, because they really are required to feel the impact of delegation. But please stay in touch. If we can support your journey along the way, we are happy to do that. Again, we provide workshops and coaching around this. So this is Mackenzie and I love this. We geek out on the delegation stuff. I think Mackenzie will drop my meeting link in the chat in case you'd like to set up a time to chat and talk about what you need help with in your delegation journey. But otherwise, I really hope you have a great day, and I really appreciate you joining us for our quick brunch and learn today. Have a fabulous week, everyone.